And hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Chapters here on Armstrong Cable. Chapters is the television show that profiles local authors, editors, and publishers in our community. I'm Eliot Parker, and it's great to have you with us. On this week's episode of Chapters, we're talking about wicked words and scary stories, and we have three authors to talk to us today about their collection of short works called Wicked Words, a collection of spooky stories by members of the Wicked Wordsmiths of the West. And we have three of those authors with us as our guests today. The first author is John Cook, and John Cook was born and raised in the Appalachian foothills of Ohio. He's a collector of hobbies who resides in Chesapeake with his wife, cat, and Oxford comma collection. He's a lover of stories and has written them often since the age of 11. He's primarily a writer of fantasy and science fiction and has self-published both a novel, The Path of Stone, and contributed 2 short stories to the recent Wicked Words anthology, which was released in the Halloween season of 2014 by the Wicked Wordsmiths of the West. We're also joined by Julianne Tillis today. Julianne is an Ohio native, and she's the chairperson of the local writing group Wicked Wordsmiths of the West. She's a youth services librarian, avid reader, and writer of the young adult genre. She's an obsessive foodie, and she talks about her pug more often than most people talk about their children. During National Novel Writing Month, Julianne organizes events to keep participants on track to completing their novels and is currently considered the municipal liaison for the Huntington, West Virginia region. Her short story, Flesh and Blood, was recently released by the Wicked Words anthology. And we're also joined by Marcia Blevins here today. And Marcia is currently living in Huntington with her boyfriend, 2 dogs, and 3 cats. She's an avid reader and began writing short stories in elementary school. She earned her BA in English with a concentration in writing from Marshall University. And while attending Marshall, she worked as an editor for and was published in the university's literary magazine, etc. Marcia has 2 stories, The Dollhouse and Blanket, in the recently released Wicked Words collection. We're delighted to have all 3 of these very talented authors with us here today to talk to us about their collection of short stories. So John, Julianne, and Marcia, welcome to Chapters. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Julianne, I wanted to start with you. Before we get into talking about the collection of stories in your book, tell us a little bit about who or what is the Wicked Wordsmiths of the West.
Wicked Wordsmiths actually started 3 years ago when a group of local writers were participating in National Novel Writing Month, and they wanted a place to meet. I worked at the time at the West End Library and offered them the meeting room, and we all sat for 30 days trying to pound out 50,000 words of novels. And after that, we really enjoyed the friendships that we'd built, so we started a writing group to meet monthly, and we have ever since. And so the part of Wicked Wordsmiths of the West comes from the West End Library.
Very nice, very nice. Now, for our audience who may not be familiar with the term you just mentioned, National Novel Writing Month, what is that? When does that take place? And what is the goal of that month? And how does that fit into what you and your group do?
National Novel Writing Month, also known as NaNoWriMo, it takes place every year in November. It's a competition internationally known online. It's Nano, N-A-N-O, WRIMO.org. Participants sign up for free, and they are challenged to write 50,000 words in 30 days. You can join local regions and find local writers and participate together in person or online.
Great, great. Sounds like a very worthwhile opportunity for folks who want to write or may be thinking about writing or are stuck in the middle or the beginning of a writing project to give them some motivation to keep writing.
Absolutely.
So that's great. Marcia, let me ask you a little bit about this collection, Wicked Words. How did this collection come together? Talk to us a little bit about where the idea came from and how did you and your colleagues decide to sit down and put this collection of short stories together?
Well, as Julie was explaining, we started having monthly meetings after we met in that initial nano phase. We had been writing for probably about 2 years at that point, and someone in the group said, we should put together a collection. And it was really an offhanded comment just in the meeting, and we was like, yeah, that's a great idea, let's do it. So we kind of planned out, we were going to have stories, a draft of a story, and we did editing workshops in our meetings, and we kind of said, yeah, let's do scary stories and put it out around Halloween, and just a lot of creative energy in the group that came together to really make it happen. And we were, helping each other, giving advice, helping with editing, making suggestions, sending each other links online to help find inspiration. So it was a really great collaborative process.
John, let me ask you a little bit about your involvement in this short story collection. And one of the things our audience will find out if they check out this book is that there's a variety of different authors, a variety of different subject matters in the collection. How did you all determine whose stories were going to be in this collection. Marcia mentioned that there was some drafting and editing and emails back and forth between the group. How did you ultimately come up with sort of the final list of stories that made the collection?
Well, over a period of several months, we all sort of started writing out these short stories and contributions that we wanted to put in, and over time we came up with a list of those different stories. One night, actually, at the meetings, we got together and took a list of all of the stories that everyone had prepared and edited and gotten all in order, and then we sort of just decided, was it based on length, kind of?
Length and subject matter.
Length and subject
Yeah.
matter. Yeah, it took us most of a meeting to decide how we wanted to go subject matter. We wanted to mix up the stories so that someone could read the first 5 or 6 and not run into 5 ghost stories in a row. We had several different, ghosts, zombies, or haunted houses, or this and that. We mixed that up, but then we also tried to vary the length of the stories, long and short, just to kind of get a good mix throughout the book itself. And the stories that went in were all of the stories that the writers themselves felt were worthy of being added to the collection. We took everything that everyone could contribute that we all sort of agreed would go in and fit the style and was edited out and ready to go. So.
Excellent, very, very good. Sounds like a lot of fun in terms of laying the groundwork for the short story collection. Julianne, what were some of the challenges, though, that you found, or you and your colleagues found, in putting this together, other than doing some of the things John was talking about, where you've got to layer the stories and make sure the lengths are okay, and that you don't have 5 ghost stories, for example, in a row? What were some other challenges that you all ran into in putting this collection together?
Deadlines, I would say, were our biggest issue. They kind of tend to sneak up on us, and I personally like to procrastinate, and so deadlines would sneak up, and it'd be kind of a last-minute rush, like, uh-oh, well, we said we'd have this done. Does everybody have their stuff? Okay, good, let's go. So it was that was probably the biggest issue, I'd have to say, but it was a definite learning process, and we look to put more anthologies out soon, but we'll be a little bit stricter on our deadlines next time.
So how long, Julianne, then did this take from the time you all came up with the idea till the time the manuscript was ready to seek publication? Was it weeks, months? How long did it take?
It was months, I believe. As Marcia said, the comment that was made offhandedly was in a January meeting, and we wanted publication in October. So in that span of time, we were able to get it all together.
Excellent, very good. And Marcia, I'll start this question with you. We can go down the row here and ask you all this. I'm curious as to where do you get your inspiration for these kind of gothic horror-esque stories? Typically writers who like this kind of stuff are motivated and get their inspiration from a variety of different places. Where did you all start with Marcia here and just go down the row here? Where'd you get your inspiration, Marcia, and then Julianne and John will ask you the same question to write this kind of a story?
So this was actually my first sort of foray into the genre. I had not really written a lot of horror or scary type stories before. Dollhouse was actually kind of inspired. I got sent on a work meeting, and we were talking about things that kind of scared us in that meeting. And one of the guys told a story about a doll that his father had bought for his sister, and it stuck in my head for some reason, and kind of spun out from that. And then Blanket was actually part of a story that I grew up on, that my mom and my grandmother had told about the house that we lived in. And proclaiming that it was actually haunted. So it was a take on that tale. So,
Julianne?
My story actually came from a prompt that we did in the writing group. And we had decided to take an old character that we'd written years ago and kind of revamp it, rewrite the story. And I think it was just for 500, 1,000 words. And came up with my main character that I used to write probably when I was in middle school or high school. And I rewrote that story, and we passed it around the group, and everybody really seemed to enjoy it. So when it came time for a submission to the anthology, I actually lengthened that prompt into what I wanted to write, because I've always really liked horror. So.
Very good. John, how about you?
I'll go over my 2 stories as well. Like the first story that I contributed was Lessons. I I went back to, for that one, I went back to kind of when I was a kid, back before rationality takes over and all of these things that aren't really scary kind of grip you and you get kind of pulled into them. And I wanted to create that sort of middle of the night claustrophobic ghost story that all the kids have the monster in their closet, and I wanted to kind of do that in my own way. And then with the man between the books, which is later in the book, I started thinking, well, we're going to be writing scary stories. We're going to be writing, and I wanted to make the writing itself scary. So that's where that idea sort of came from. Kind of the first time that writing started in the civilized, in history. I wanted to take that concept and make that horrific in itself, which is where the idea of that came from. I won't go into too much detail to reveal that, but you'll have to read and find out. But that's but that's where I wanted to go with that. I wanted to make the writing itself the scary part. So.
Very good, excellent. And John, I want to stay with you for this next question because you wrote the introduction
I did.
To the collection.
Yes.
And you had an interesting quote that I wanted to ask you about. It says in the first paragraph, whether we like to admit our fears or not, there is something that scares us, and sometimes we don't even know what it is ourselves until it is right there in front of us. And I think that is a great sentence and a great paragraph, if you read on, that really encapsulates everything that goes on in this collection of stories. Why do you think it is that, despite the fact that people are often scared by scary stories and often in some ways intimidated by them or want to stay away from them, that we still read them, we still write them, we still look to them at certain times of the year, like in the month of October during Halloween? Well, why do people still gravitate to these kinds of stories and this kind of fiction even today?
Well, I actually kind of talked about that in the introduction a little bit as well. One of the reasons I think that is we tell each other scary stories and we scare each other because on some sort of emotional level, being scared is a way to kind of know that we're safe. If you catch my meaning. We can tell scary stories and this happened to someone or this happened somewhere else or this isn't happening to me, but we know that it happened and it's over there, so we can tell the stories about it, and it lets us know that we're safe and we're still okay. And I think the quote is something like that: we're still alive for now. So it's just one of those things where we can kind of distance ourselves but yet encounter that and know that we're still safe from that.
So it's one of those things we can appreciate from a distance, not
Yes.
being directly involved. Very
Right.
good. I think that's great. And I think that is something that really stands out in all these stories that you all have put together in this collection. Julianne, let me go back to you for just a moment. Your story, Flesh and Blood, you kind of talked a little bit about some of your stories. One of the things that I really liked about this collection of books is that all of your characters are very involved in the story. This is all very character-driven short fiction. Tell us a little bit about what happens to your character in Flesh and Blood, because we start off getting to know that character really pretty early on in your story. Well, what happens to your character, and maybe what were some of the reasons you set that character up for those sets of challenges?
Well, my character, Robin, is a young, rebellious girl living the partying life, and she isn't really fond of her mother, to say the least. And she will do anything to kind of just strike out against her mom. And what ends up happening is, in a stupor, she encounters a vampire, and who, I don't want to give away the ending, but forces her to face her mother in a new way. We'll say that. I really like the tension between mother-daughter characters. It tends to pop up a lot in my work, so I've noticed it's kind of been a trend for me, but it's something that I like to explore a lot. So.
Excellent, very good. Marcia, one of your stories that I really enjoyed was Blanket, and you think about Blanket and you think the story's going to be about sort of this inanimate object, which is a part of the story, but Fiona's a pretty interesting character in your short story as well. Tell us a little bit about her and what she goes through in your story.
So Fiona, she wakes up every morning and finds her blanket in the floor, and it's a very cold, drafty old farmhouse that she lives in. And she thinks she's kicking it off. She's having trouble, figuring out why. She's tucking it in. She's doing all these things to kind of keep warm. And they go through a pretty significant snowstorm in the story, and a friend comes over to visit her. And they like most teenagers, have curiosities, and they start dabbling with an Ouija board, and that kind of leads to some answers as to what's happening with the blanket. So it's actually, like I said, it was a tale that I kind of grew up on. My mom and my grandmother had often claimed to hear things in our house that we were growing up in, and my grandmother actually did give me a blanket that kind of inspired the story. I have it tucked away in storage to keep it, preserved and everything. But just thinking about that old blanket and how, the stories that I grew up on came together kind of gave birth to Fiona and let her go through some of those same stories that I had heard about as a child.
That's great. Fiona's a terrific character, by the
Thank
way.
you.
One of my favorites in the
Thank
collection.
you.
John, let me go back to you. Your story caught my attention from the title, Lessons. I really wanted to read that immediately because I thought, somebody's going to be learning a lesson in this story, or multiple lessons in this story, and it really caught my attention. Tell us a little bit about your story, Lessons, who's involved, and what your character goes through in that circumstance.
Okay, Lessons is it's the shorter of the two that I contributed to the collection, but it's basically it's kind of a color piece. I wanted it to be dark and enclosed and very claustrophobic, I think is the word I used before. The story came from when I first moved out on my own. I was living in this new house. It was the first time I'd been in my house by myself, and I started thinking about, here I am in this house, and whatever in the world wanted to come in here could come in here, and it's that kind of feeling, that tension when we're on our own. But the reason it's called Lessons is that I actually wrote a story, but there's a backstory behind the story that you actually read. The encounter that the main character has is with an entity of unknown origin who is coming to retrieve someone for a lesson. We're not told what it is. I know what it is. And I'll just tell you because it's really not important to the story, but it's a ghost story. The mother is coming to get her child for a piano lesson. That's the idea. And the main character sort of is there instead and has to go and experience this lesson. But it's actually kind of a murder backstory that this person encounters the ghost of. But that's the idea, is that, what is that thing lurking in my new house? And, you're under the cover. And I used a lot of, what is the phrase I used? Childhood voodoo. If I'm entirely covered up, the monster can't get me, that kind of thing. And I wanted to take it back to that sort of primal child, fear. And so that's the basic premise of it.
It's a great story, and you're right that when we're little kids, that's when we really get first exposed to those stories that give us goosebumps and make us nervous and make us afraid to turn the lights off and sleep in the dark. So it's a great story in the collection as well. Marshall, let me come back to you, and I'll open this question up to all three of you. Now that you all have had some time to sort of step away from the collection and some time has passed, is there anything in the collection you wish had been done differently? Maybe some stories you wished had made it, some rearranging of stories, anything that you think now, we should have done that, or we'll do it differently the next collection we do?
Yeah, there was actually another story that I had that I was considering in the process. It came to me, I was doing some research on historical women, and I'd found a story about one of the, I don't want to say first female serial killers, but she and her husband had ran a hotel outside of Charleston, South Carolina, and they were actually murdering people and robbing them. And I kind of played around with that story a little bit and did my own take on it. I ended up not giving it to the group for consideration, but I did go ahead and finish it up and put it on my blog, post it there. So, and after I polished it a little bit, I kind of wish I'd went with it, but maybe another anthology at another time.
Okay, very good. Julianne, how about you? Anything you wished had gone differently with the collection?
I think I had the same kind of thing happened with me because I had an idea and originally wanted to do something with Ouija boards. And after where I work at the library, somebody had actually donated one to the library with a pile of books, and I kind of wanted to spin a story off of that. And I wasn't happy with how it turned out, so I kind of put it on the back burner for a while and ended up not including it. So I'd like to go back and redo that one again. Other than that, I'm really happy with the anthology. Like I said, it was a learning process, and definitely deadlines and some more editing and other little knobs that we could fine tune. But for the next one, I think we'll be better prepared.
Very good. John, how about you?
I'm very happy with the way it turned out. There isn't anything I would really change about the stories that I contributed, and I think that everyone ended up putting something really great in there. And for me, it's actually kind of a yearbook experience because all of my friends in this group have contributed these great stories, and now I can keep it with me. And you know, I love to read the stuff that they've written. But the one thing I will take away from it is that one of my stories actually may end up permeating the rest of the fiction that I ever write. And if you read The Man Between the Books, you'll kind of get the idea of what I'm talking about. But I think it may end up being my calling card. I don't know. But that may influence me going on forward. But yeah, no, I wouldn't change anything that I can think of off the top of my head.
And John, before we move on, I want to get your thoughts because I know you've published another novel, The Path of Stone.
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about that and what kind of novel that is, and briefly, what goes on, what's the plot of that particular book?
Okay. The Path of Stone is actually a book that was written, I was asked to write it. I am a member of, or I'm a participant in a huge game that takes place at Gen Con in Indianapolis every year, kind of a cross between a walk through haunted house and Dungeons and Dragons. But I was asked by the owner of True Dungeon, which is the name of the event. I was asked to write a connecting story between the arcs that the players actually play, and so the Path of Stone represents a middle story between two actual stories in the game. It doesn't require any foreknowledge of the game to read. There are some in-jokes, obviously, that the players are going to get, but that's what that comes from, and it's a fantasy based in a kind of Dungeons and Dragons-esque world. Magic and dwarves and elves and the whole 9 yards. But it's basically just to get the players from one year to the next when they change story arcs. And it's really just about a clan of dwarves that goes missing and what happened to them as the heroes try to figure that out.
Very good. Well, it sounds like a terrific book, and we wish you continued success with that as well. Julianne, in our closing moments here, I know that the proceeds of this book, for people that buy a copy of your collection of short stories, Wicked Words, the money goes to a pretty good cause. Tell us a little bit about where the proceeds go and what it's used for.
Wicked Wordsmiths, actually, we use it to fund a variety of things, including National Novel Writing Month, which is happening right now because we are the group that pretty much puts it on. We host all the things. We buy prizes for participants and make buttons and all of those supplies. And Wicked Wordsmiths also will be putting out more of our anthologies, and we will be attending conferences to better our craft. And trying to think what else we have.
It's a great cause. It is. It's going back into the group, which is open to the public. We have a membership process that anyone can join. And again, it's just to help local community writers better their craft, have a group of like-minded individuals that they can come and participate in the writing process with. So all of the funds do go back into the group. It's not going to any one individual.
So tell us, Marcia, what is the next anthology up next for Wicked Wordsmiths of the West? What is the next one you guys are working on?
That's a good question. Right now, we think it's going to be a collection of mystery stories. A few of us, and myself included, we've not really jumped into the mystery genre before, so we're going to do a test run. We're going to do a test run in December to see how that works out for us, and if it's a go, then it's going to be mystery. If we find out we're not so great at writing mysteries, then we might have to pick another topic.
Maybe go away from that
Yeah,
area.
we might have to get away from that, but we think mystery right now.
Yeah. That sounds like a great opportunity and a great project for your organization and your group. So we'll just go down the row here. Marcia, we'll start with you. If anyone wants to get in contact with you individually or get in contact with you all collectively or are interested in joining Wicked Wordsmiths of the West, how can they get in contact with you and how can they find out more information about your writing group?
Great. We have a Wicked Wordsmith of the West Facebook page. If you just type in Wicked Wordsmiths of the West, it should pull up that page. Me individually, I have a blog at marbleswords.com.
Julianne?
Okay. We also have the Wicked Wordsmiths email. It's wickedwordsmiths@gmail.com. For me personally, I run a blog amongtheauthors.com, and I'm also on Facebook. John?
I think that covers everything about
I know.
Wicked Wordsmiths. But yeah, and obviously you can come,
To our meetings.
to our meeting if you
Yeah.
want to try. We do applications after NaNoWriMo is over, that kind of thing. If you're interested in getting involved, there's also the NaNoWriMo Huntington Region Facebook page and the website, which we do actively contribute in. Personally, my website is johnccook.com. I've had that for years, and I use it as kind of my writing blog, and you can link there to Twitter, Facebook, or whatever. And also there are links to my books on the Kindle store. So.
Fantastic, great. The title of the book is Wicked Words, a collection of spooky stories by members of the Wicked Wordsmiths of the West. And we've had John Cook, Julianne Tillis, and Marcia Blevins here to talk about this great collection of short stories. So for the person that's looking for horror and for looking for something to make the hairs on their neck stand up in terms of fiction, it's a great collection. Guys, congratulations, and best of luck to you, not only with this anthology, but all the future anthologies that you all come up with. And thanks for being on Chapters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And lastly, each week on Chapters, we have a lot of folks that sponsor and help make this program possible, and one of those organizations is Empire Books and News here at Pullman Square in Huntington. We invite you to stop by and check out Empire Books and News for any kind of books that you need for your reading tastes. Charlotte and her staff can help you right here at Empire Books and News. They also have the largest selection of magazines in the tri-state, so whatever your reading tastes or pleasures are, Empire Books and News can help you and find that special thing that you're looking for. We appreciate them providing our studio taping space each week here for Chapters. And if you've got a question, comment, or story suggestion about this Chapters program or any Chapters program that you've seen on Armstrong Cable, we want to hear from you. You can send us an email to the address at the bottom of the screen here. It is lp4@zoominternet.net, the letter L, letter P, number 4 at zoominternet.net. We appreciate all the feedback and comments that we do receive, so keep them coming. We do read them and take your considerations and suggestions into consideration. So we appreciate those thoughts and those comments. And we also want to remind you, if you've missed any episodes of Chapters, you can check out the Armstrong One Wire YouTube page where you can see previous episodes of Chapters. Just go to www.youtube.com/Armstrong One Wire, that's all one word, and you can go back and look at over 9 hours of previous author, editor, and publisher interviews from the 2 years of Chapters interviews that we've been doing here on Armstrong Cable. So if you've missed something or you want to go back and watch something one more time, that's where you can find it, and the address is at the bottom of the screen here at the Armstrong One Wire YouTube page. And that's going to do it for us this time on Chapters. Please come again next time, and in the meantime, stay tuned to this station for news and views that impact you and your community.